Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Real Perspectives. I am your host, Latanya Moore, and we have an absolutely fabulous show set out for you guys tonight. But I want to ask you guys a couple of questions. Have you looked at your mate and sort of asked yourself, who is this person? Because they've changed from when you first started your relationship. Have you ever been in a situation where you realize that there may just be a demon in your house? Well, listen, Mario Brown and we have the perfect guest to help you understand exactly what is going on right now in your relationship. We want to welcome author Donna Anderson. Donna is the author of and the thought leader behind a very fabulous educational website, lovefraud.com. Donna, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Latanya. I'm so glad to be here. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Awesome. So tell our viewers a little bit more about who you are and what you do.
Okay. Well, first I'll tell you how I became an author on the topic of sociopaths. And not all sociopaths are deranged serial killers, as people tend to think, but all sociopaths are exploiters and manipulators. And I married a sociopath. This man took $250,000 from me. He cheated with 6 different women during our 2.5-year involvement. He had a child with one of those women. And then 10 days after I left him, he married the mother of the child, which turned out to be the second time that he committed bigamy. And he also took $250,000 from me and was taking money from multiple other women at the same time. Now, when I started to figure out what was going on, I was like totally freaked out by this. And I was speaking to a therapist because, as you can imagine, I was in need of some therapy with this situation, and telling her what my husband was doing. And she's like, he sounds like a sociopath. And I'm like, sociopath? What's that? And when I researched it, I found out that that's exactly what he was. And once I realized that I was involved with a sociopath, all the insane behaviors that he was exhibiting started to make sense. And I realized that I didn't know what this was. I was a journalist. I was an educated woman. I ran a business. And I figured that if I didn't know what it was, other people didn't know what it was. And so that's why I started Love Fraud, to educate people on what sociopaths are, how many of them there are in our lives, and how to spot them and avoid them and get away from them.
Wow. Wow.
Well, first of all, let me just say hello, everybody. Thank you for being here this week. We are excited about this. But you said that he was a bigamist. He stole money from you, and this was a repeated behavior because it wasn't the first time he had done it.
Yes. Yes.
Wow.
What I learned is that he was involved with what I could track about 25 or 30 different women, over perhaps the prior 10 years. And what happened was that I originally, when I found out what he was doing, and the first thing that I found, I knew he was taking money from me, but he always presented it in a way that we were investing in our future, because he presented himself to be this successful entrepreneur and a Hollywood scriptwriter. And he was just needed a little help to get over the hump, and then we would be living in the lap of luxury. So he never stole the money from me. What he did was convince me to help fund his business opportunities. But he would do things like get me to buy tickets for him to travel places. And I later found out he was traveling to see other women. So when I finally left him, when I found out that he had a child with another woman, I started going through all these papers that he had around his office, because I had built an office for him in my home. And the guy was a pack rat. There was papers all over the place, faxes and all his documents. And I started going through them, and I found evidence of at least 20 to 30 other women that he had been involved with in approximately around the 5 or 6 years before our involvement.
Wow. Well, let me ask this. How did you guys meet?
We met online, and that's one of the things that folks should realize is that there are an awful lot of predators online. But this was back in 1996. And so it was like before they had Match.com. In fact, I was on AOL Romance or something like that. And I mean, they didn't even have pictures with the listings. It was all text.
Wow.
But what he did was he had this ad posted, and I saw it, and I'm like, well, maybe I'll look at it, and it took me like 2 or 3 weeks to even respond. And when I finally did, I wrote this letter, and I said something to the effect of, at the time I was just about to turn 40 years old, so I said that I ran my own business, I'm highly successful, but I have a hole in my life, and that I don't have a relationship, and so what I'm doing is working all the time and taking my money to the bank. Well, what I realize now is that I just set myself up to be this target. Here I was, presenting myself to be this lonely person with a successful business and money in the bank. Hello, and so of course his response was, "You sound delightful," and from that point on, the seduction started. And what he did, which actually a fair amount of sociopaths do, is he presented himself to be someone who he wasn't. And this was in a grand scale. I mean, for example, he was originally from Australia, although he was living in the United States, not far from me. So this was not a long distance relationship. And he said that he had been in the Australian military, in their special forces, and had served during the Vietnam War, and told me that he had won the Victoria Cross, which is the equivalent of the Congressional Medal of Honor. And he sent me all this documentation of the combat reports and, copies of, different things that he was involved with, the certificates, and his picture on the cover of Soldier of Fortune. It was all fabricated. None of it was true. So and I wasn't the only one he told this to, because he was actually involved in the local Vietnam Veterans Association. He had all these guys fooled, or at least a lot of them fooled. I mean, he did a presentation on Veterans Day. It was with his picture in the paper. So, I mean, he goes around with this story that he's been telling for years and years. The whole thing was fabricated.
Wow. You know what? Rarely are we speechless. Speechless. I mean, really, I have never been this quiet on this show. My God, are you kidding me? Listen, so let's deal with this for a second. So you met him online. Yes. You're obviously a professional, educated woman. You innocently went online because you desired companionship.
Right.
In conversing with him, you started giving a little bit too much information, even though it was innocently given. You're just kind of talking. And so he seized the moment because he saw that moment of vulnerability. Is vulnerability the thing that the sociopath seeks and knows how to get to?
Absolutely. What sociopaths do is they target people's vulnerability. And one of the things that they do is that when they are scoping out a potential target or just seeing what will happen, they ask a lot of questions, and often deep personal questions. And if you're on the receiving end of that, you think that this person is so head over heels in love with you that he wants to know everything about you. But what they're doing is they are searching for your vulnerabilities. They are looking for the deepest place within you where they can set their hooks. And so when you talk about your dreams, I mean, essentially what they do is they use your dreams to snag you. They promise to make your dreams come true. And so here you are talking to this person who's promising to make your dreams come true and to give you everything you always wanted and haven't been able to get. And that's how they hook you. And it's they seem to have this radar for vulnerability, and they just know how to pick it up. And then they draw it out of you, and then that's how they hook you.
Okay, Tanya,
here's what's really interesting, because I would probably, if I were a gambler, which I'm not, I would probably bet money that there are so many people that are watching this that's like, oh, well, she shouldn't have given that information. This is what happened. Mm-hmm. Let me say this. The average woman talks too much. We talk too much. We overshare. Someone says, well, hey, what time is it? Oh, it's 6:10, and now we telling them what we did all day. Like, we just decide that we're going to give a lot of information. So I think that as women, we just tend to be a little bit too verbal. But one thing that I want people to understand is that even though you guys met online, and I don't want anybody to miss this, it developed into a relationship to the point of marriage. This person actually, he didn't just come in and let's say fool you. Like he had documentation. And think about it. I don't know how many people have been involved with any type of veterans groups, but they vet you. Like, it's not easy. It's not easy to fool all of these people. This is really a sickness. Tell us though, Donna, what are some things that let's talk about behaviors. I know you talked about they seem like they're very interested but they're really trying to get information. Let's talk about some behavior cues that our viewers can actually start to be on the lookout, because we got a couple of other of these personalities. We got the psychopath and the narcissist to deal with before we get off of here. So let's talk about the sociopath though. What are some things and cues that those of us single folks, what do we need to be on the lookout for?
Okay, well, I happen to write a book on this topic, and the book is called Red Flags of Love Fraud, 10 Signs You're Dating a Sociopath. Okay.
Say that again, Donald, so they'll get that.
Okay, the book is called Red Flags of Love Fraud, 10 Signs You're Dating a Sociopath. And essentially what I did was, after talking to hundreds and thousands of people about their situations, these trends and patterns started to emerge of how they got involved with sociopaths and the type of behavior that they exhibited. So I made a list of my own based on what I heard. And then what I did was that I validated this through an internet survey that I did that had about 1,300 respondents. And essentially, I tested what I came up with and compared it to what other people experienced. And so I have these 10 signs. And so I can start telling you what some of them are. Now, the first sign of a sociopath is that they tend to be charismatic and charming. They tend to have a lot of energy. They're very exciting. They always know what to say, and they never miss a beat. And I can say that this is exactly what I experienced with my ex-husband. I mean, this man just always knew exactly what to say, and always had the words. And you know, of course, you know, even when he was trying to smooze me or whatever, he just always had the perfect things to say. And a lot of people have found that to be the case. Now, the other thing that happens is that they tend to be what we call sudden soulmates. It's like all of a sudden you meet this person and you feel like he's the person or she's the person, because I do want to clarify that there are female sociopaths as well. But anyway, this person is the one you've been looking for all your life. And there's a reason for that. And the reason is that the sociopath studies you, figures out what it is that you're looking for, and then makes himself or herself into that person. So
now let's stop right there.
Okay.
Because I do over the past few years, I've done a program called Relationship Realities, and one of the things that I stress, even just to my female friends, is you cannot reveal too much of your past. It's a dangerous thing to sit and tell everything, because, and this is male or female, really. Because what happens is, if a person is desiring to be in a relationship with you, they will indeed become what you say you need. They will become that. They will become that chameleon that will take on every aspect of that. If you tell them the last time you were hurt, what hurt you, what was done to you, they're going to carefully craft the narrative They're going to carefully craft their behavior to walk around those areas very carefully. And so when I try to tell them that, Donna, I've seen rejection. They shut down because they do not believe that they're revealing too much. They think that they're being open and honest because this person is being open and honest. But in fact, what they're really doing is compiling information on you. They're simply compiling that information, getting ready to strike slowly but surely. In your case, what I think is so familiar that so many people experience is you have a pure heart going in. Mm-hmm. And this person has actually a skill set. Mm-hmm. You developed a skill set to literally navigate through various areas, even government. Mm-hmm. Even government, you see. And so so for those listeners today, nobody's trying to beat you up. But what we seek to say is that you have to know these things. And that's not to say that every person you meet that's nice is a sociopath. That's not what Donna and Latanya and I are saying. But we are saying that there are some very strong markers, some strong indicators that tell you that. So you have to carefully craft how you're going to interact. You know what I'm saying? I tell people, I just told someone like a couple of days ago, is that they started sharing information about their desire to do ministry or to do some things. And they started telling, oh, you know what? You're so anointed. You're just so this. And, you know, you're going to do great things for the Lord. And that person's guard comes further down because now this person sees my potential. And at the end of the day, they have been and are a lying sociopath. You know, so I think this is really great. I do have one question I want to ask, though. What you mentioned is that the charisma factor. How does a person distinguish the difference between a naturally charismatic person and the one that's contrived?
Okay, well, that's why there are 10 warning signs, 10 red flags of a sociopath, because the thing is that not any one of these signs is not enough. All right. What you need to do is see the entire pattern of behavior, because certainly there are charismatic people who are not sociopaths and who are just naturally able to speak freely and coherently, and there's nothing wrong with them. So the idea is that you have to know all the warning signs, and when you start to see a pattern, that's when you have to be concerned. Because essentially what sociopathy is, and what a lot of these personality disorders are, is they're what's called a syndrome. And what that means is that it's a collection of traits and behaviors that tend to cluster together. So, you know, so that's why there's 10 of the warning flags that I came up with. And if you went to any of the psychological texts, you know, you'll see and look these things up, you'll see a list of 7 or 10 or 20 different characteristics that make up this disorder. So if you see 1 or 2, that's not enough. You want to be able to see the whole pattern, especially because, like, you know, a few of the traits on my list, I mean, they're the things that you want to see in a dream date. You know, like, you know, I mean, one of the characteristics is sexual magnetism. Okay. And the fact of the matter is that sociopaths, both male and female, all have very high levels of testosterone. So they tend to be great in bed, and people seem to have these, you know, great relationships and these earth-moving experiences. And, you know, the target thinks it's because they're just so in love, when the fact of the matter is it's because the sociopath is promiscuous and gets a lot of practice and is not shy about what they want to do. And so that's what makes them great in bed.
Wow. So you just gave us some great insight because Latanya and I have talked about this, is that this is where the blinders are put on if the sex is great. I believe that that's one of the greatest blinders on the planet, because now it's so great. And as you said, Donna, it's earth shattering. This moment that you just had causes you to see things that are right before you, and you swear you can't see them. Yes. You cannot, because this person has met you at a place that you perhaps never been before. And so now you're willing to turn a blind eye. As those things started slipping, as they start slipping, as those things are being revealed, and I found that the male and the female, and we got to stress that females are just as prevalent as the male.
Yes.
But I've noticed this, is that it is almost, they almost seem like I can't even find the word, but it seems like they get turned completely out. They get turned completely out sexually. And so the sociopath gets sloppy after a while. They start to get real sloppy because they're so sure now that they have you. And even when there is revelation right before your eyes, you are so immersed sexually. And they know how also when they feel that you are close to getting to the truth, they seduce you all over again.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. Tanya, what I know you got something to say about that.
Listen, I'm going down my list.
Right.
If I would have had Donna's class years ago, oh my gosh, I would have saved some time. Let me tell you. You know, it's very interesting, but seriously, all jokes aside, this is a very serious matter, because I think that people with these types of personality disorders, they leave a trail of destruction.
Yep.
Because each life that they shatter now impacts other lives, which is part of the motivation why we wanted to bring you on, Donna, because you're not just a writer, a person who studied this and wrote about it. You had your own experience.
Mm-hmm.
And you're like a lot of women, very successful, highly functioning, over 40, looking for a relationship, because that's the only thing in your life that you haven't mastered yet. Mm-hmm. You haven't gotten to that place where, you know, you're mastering career, you're mastering business, you know, as we say, like you're a beast everywhere else, but love. And so to have someone who comes along, and again, let's think about it. Now they are meeting your need at every single level. Who wouldn't want that? The question is, and I think what's the distinguishing factor, Donna, in having that great person who does meet your needs and really understanding that you're dealing with a sociopath?
Well, the key is, first of all, to know that sociopaths exist. Okay? I mean, that's half the problem, is that in our culture, we get all these messages like all men are created equal, which of course now includes women. Everybody has good inside. We're all God's children. Everybody just wants to be loved. And these are the messages that we get from the time we're very small until we're growing up. And things like, you know, you got to give everybody a chance. Everybody deserves a second chance. Everybody has baggage, you know, all this kind of stuff. So what happens is that we are receiving these messages that make us vulnerable to sociopaths. And at the same time, nobody is talking about the fact that sociopaths exist. And the numbers are absolutely staggering. Approximately 12% of women and 16% of men have serious personality disorders that make them unsuitable to be a romantic partner. Okay.
Oh, you have to repeat that statistics. For those of you that are watching, take notes. What's the statistic again, Donna?
It's 12% of women and 16% of men have serious personality disorders that make them unsuitable to be your romantic partner. Now, we are talking about 46 million people in the United States.
Right.
Okay. That's how big this problem is. And the fact that nobody is talking about it and nobody is educating us. I mean, I can't tell you how many people have said to me, why don't they teach this in high school? Right. You know, and I have gone to high schools and taught to the kids, you know, about this, because they don't know. And, you know, we're all just going out into the world like sheep ready to be shorn, you know, because we don't know that they're out there. And, you know, so we in fact, we are giving the opposite message. We're taught to share and to reveal ourselves and to be trusting and everything. And we're not taught to protect ourselves.
Absolutely.
So that's why so many people are getting in trouble.
I totally agree. And you think about it, from high school. Well, let's just go because people are dating much earlier than high school. You know, you have young girls who are being abused as early as middle school by boyfriends. Those traits are very serious in young males and females. We see so many violent, narcissistic, sociopathic young girls. And we see that on a continuous basis, and it's getting worse. But nobody has said anything. And I guess we talk about the church a lot because it's such a benchmark in so many people's lives. It's a place where they go to find solace. But at the same time, the education piece is that the enemy, the devil, doesn't want you married. You know, that's what they end up hearing so much of. And it's just like, okay, no, there is a serious mental illness. And what has happened is even some people are prone because of the way they've been trained and they've been conditioned to witness their parents, their aunties stay involved with sociopaths and call it love. You know, just call it love, call it love. Well, everybody goes through that. Everybody goes through that. This is normal. You just got to stand. I was talking to a friend of mine today, and we were saying that her father, when she exposed to her father that her first husband was abusive, he said, well, you know what? You got to learn how to shut your mouth sometimes. You just got to learn how to be quiet. You talk too much. And that kind of conditioning goes to the next generation if the person doesn't recognize that this is unacceptable. I know men who are drawn to sociopathic women. We see it all the time. We can look at stars. I was reading an article today about Amber Rose, how she emasculates men. How does this happen? How is it that she can take a man who's supposed to be hard or whatever, super masculine, but she can emasculate him, you see, because of those sociopathic tendencies that nobody is talking about, and they're very, very real. And you have to know them on the front end, because most times what happens is, and I don't know about you, but you've done the study, I've counseled people, and I found out that if they've ever been in a lengthy relationship like that without being taught what that was, how to recognize it again, they'll go find another one. They'll go find the next person. The next relationship is the same type. And this is why we get that same thing. Oh, it looks like I draw this kind of person to me. Every time I look around, I'm always in this relationship, because you become accustomed to accommodating that behavior. And so we've got to say tonight that you owe it to yourself to love yourself enough to take this resource that Donna has and really invest yourself in it and let it be invested in you. Because you know tonight, even from what we described, that perhaps you are really experiencing that. And it's okay, because there are resources available that will help you, particularly those who are getting ready to get back out here dating. You know, a lot of women that have been divorced, a lot of men that have been divorced, the game is different. You cannot afford to go out here now without this information. Something has to be done on the front end. So I think this is really critical.
Yes. And the other thing that folks need to understand, we talked previously about how sociopaths target your vulnerabilities. And one of the things that I come across time and time again is the fact that a lot of the folks who have been targeted by sociopaths had disordered parents. Okay. And so what happens is that, you know, this is what they grow up with. They grow up with the weirdness of what goes on in a sociopathic household. And one of the things that it does, sociopaths make terrible parents. I mean, they just, the core issue with a sociopath is that they do not have the ability to love. And this includes their own children. Most sociopaths tend to look at their kids kind of like a piece of property, or, you know, something that makes them look good, or you know, kind of like they treat it the same way as a new flat screen TV if they get a new baby in the house or something like that. But anyhow, what happens is that the children in these situations are invariably damaged. And often what happens is that they go through all these situations that leave them with very, very deep emotional wounds. And it's these emotional wounds that make them vulnerable and that the sociopath manages to hook onto. So I would urge any of your listeners or viewers who realize that they did have a terrible childhood, that they had disordered parents, that they are at risk. And the best thing that they can do is to try and work on self-healing, to heal those deep wounds that are within them. And that's how they can avoid being involved with a sociopath.
Absolutely, Don. That's so powerful. That is so powerful. You said that the sociopath does not have the ability to love. Very
right.
powerful, because I think that, and I've counseled many people, and they simply believe that, well, I have what they need, though. I have what they need. And I believe that what you just said is that type of behavior comes from the parental piece, because they learn to love their mom, their dad, even through that behavior. They've learned to accommodate them on the parental level. So when they get involved with one, they know what it's like to deal with that personality, even though they don't know what it's called. They know how to love it in spite of. They know how to take the pain, the rejection. They know how to take the mishandling. And so it becomes accommodating. And they simply believe, I've never seen these people with a hero complex, that it's clear that this person is incapable of giving you any decent amount of love. And yet you feel like, if I stay there long enough, and if I love them more, if I love them more, if I love them more, if I do more for them, they're going to come around. And a little bit more of your soul is being chipped away at every time. So those of you who are listening today, you don't have the anointing to make a sociopath love you. Mm-hmm. You're not that anointed. I know you're anointed, but you're not that anointed, because something has to happen there. You know what I mean? And you can't spend time there until you're so depleted that your soul has a hole in it, because you're trying to make this person love you when they absolutely cannot even feel your need. They can't even feel your need, you know? And I think that this is so critical to talk about, because I know, I'm looking at some of the comments, and I think I know people that may not even be on here now, but I know them personally, that feel as if, though, if I love them right, if I could love them right. I saw my mom do this. I saw my aunties do this. My grandma did this. And so, you know, you just have to love them, and you got to stay with them. You got to pray for them. You got to fast for them. You got to do all of this stuff. But the mental illness has to be treated. It has to be dealt with, you know, before you lose your mind.
Yeah.
So all right.
But I think it comes down also, Mario, I think to capacity. I think that's what I hear Donna saying, is that these types of personalities do not have the capacity to love. That they cannot do it. It's something that they don't have the capacity to do. And this is why this show is very important, because people that learn these skills, they will know that there is nothing they can ever do to change the situation. And so what they have to do then is make a choice. They have to make a choice if they're going to continue in the relationship that they may have had with, let's say, their parent that may have had this disorder, or are they going to love themselves enough to move on? Because that's really, I think, what the goal is for people to understand how to spot this behavior, number one. Number two, and when you realize that you are dealing with a sociopath, there's nothing you can do. That is a battle that you're not going to win. Mm-hmm. And that, I think, is what's most important.
Yeah, this is critical. And perhaps we should just spend a little bit of time talking about what these disorders are.
Okay? Yes.
Yes.
All right. Now, first of all, I mean, I use the term sociopath. However, sociopath is not a clinical diagnosis. The clinical diagnoses are either antisocial personality disorder, narcissistic personality disorder, borderline personality disorder, or psychopathy. So which is psychopath. And essentially, the mental health profession has not agreed upon what to call these people and how the term should be defined. So there's all this confusion about who they are and what the terms are. So I use the term sociopath as an umbrella term to encompass all these people who have exploitative and manipulative personality disorders. Okay. Now, the key to understand is that this is not a mental illness that can be treated. Okay. Once a sociopath, who has any one of these disorders, is an adult, there is no rehabilitation. Okay. They cannot get better. So, you send them to anger management, you send them to therapy, it doesn't do anything. In fact, there is actually research that shows that if you attempt to treat a psychopath, it makes them worse. Okay, because what happens is that they learn more tricks. They learn the buzzwords and they learn these things from the therapist, and it actually makes them worse. So there are some things that can be done for at-risk children, but this disorder tends to kick in around puberty because of the testosterone. And that's why you see all these, disordered boys and girls in high school who are already exhibiting these traits. It's because that's when it tends to show up. It can be seen in some children. I mean, I've had people tell me that they knew there was something wrong with the baby when it was in the womb. There was just something wrong. And but this disorder is highly genetic. And so what happens is that it is somebody can be born with the predisposition, a genetic predisposition to become disordered. And then what happens is that they typically have this interaction with the environment, which includes the parenting that they receive and where they live and other situations in their environment. And that's what allows the disorder to develop. But the key is that once the person is an adult, there is no rehabilitation. I mean, nothing is going to make this person better. So you're just wasting your life by hanging around with this person.
Let me ask you a question, Donna. What do you think, and what have you discovered in going through this process about you? Was there something in your childhood that? Let me ask you a question for this. Have you been able to discover exactly what happened with you that would make you vulnerable to that? Is there anything that's distinctive that you've discovered?
Well, I can answer that two ways. First of all, I did not have an abusive childhood. Okay. I mean, my parents had the normal problems that parents have, but, there was no abuse. Nobody got hit. Our parents did their best that they could, to try and raise me and my brothers and sister. So I did not have that experience. But what I did have was mistaken ideas about what I deserved. Okay.
Okay. Stop. I just have to breathe for a moment because I can't let you go any further. You got to deal with that. Please stay right there for a moment because that is the entrance point for all of this. It is this is it. Please talk there for me, please.
Okay. I somehow acquired the idea that I was only valued for what I could do for people and that I didn't deserve to be loved just for who I was. I mean, not that I could explain that in my youth, but that was the idea. It was, and it probably came from the fact that, I was smart when I was in school and which of course, is can be difficult because, sometimes people think you're the teacher's pet, and all these other things that could go on when you're in school. And plus, I guess I just felt, I just didn't have the social skills that other kids had. And so consequently, the way I related to folks was by being able to help them and do things. And I came up with this idea that in order for me to have somebody like me, I had to do things for them. I wasn't deserving of having a friend who just wanted to hang around with me. And, I can't explain exactly where that came from, but this was the idea that I acquired. And consequently, that was my vulnerability. So I had a terrible dating history, and the other way to look at this, which is kind of interesting, is that a colleague of mine did research on what makes women vulnerable to psychopaths. I mean, she specifically worked with psychopaths, although you could say sociopaths as well. And it's not at all what you would think. Okay. I mean, it's not that you're like, have low self-esteem or anything along that. What makes women vulnerable to psychopaths are three things. The first trait is extroversion. Okay. And what that means is that you're a go-getter, you like people, you like to do things, you like to be around people. And what happens is that extroverted women, tend to be professionals, tend to be achievement oriented, tend to be able to accomplish things. And a lot of guys are intimidated by this. Okay. So that kind of makes it hard for, professional women to get a date, which is what I experienced. And so essentially what happens is
I'm a member of that club, Donna.
There you go. There you go. Okay. So what happens is that, extroverted women want somebody who is on their level. Okay. You want somebody who's extroverted like you are and accomplishment oriented and things like that. And, all the regular guys, are nice, but they might seem to be a little bit wimpy, or not quite up to, your level of excitement. So who comes along that meets the bill but a sociopath?
Sociopath or psychopath. The psychopath.
Exactly. This charismatic, energetic, sexy person, who's achievement oriented and everything. That's who comes along. So anyhow, that's the first trait is extroversion. The second trait is cooperativeness. The people who get involved with sociopaths tend to score very high, like 98th percentile on the cooperation scale. You want things to work out. And the third trait is investment in relationships. Special moments are important to you. You're willing to, work towards the relationship. So these are the three things that make women vulnerable to psychopaths. Now, unfortunately, I don't have any research on what makes men vulnerable to female or psychopaths, but those are what it is. And so it's not at all, that you have low self-esteem. In fact, if a psychopath wants to take somebody's assets, I mean, you don't want somebody who's got low self-esteem. They're going to go after somebody who has something that they can take.
Right. And I think that's really critical because we run to the low self-esteem thing all the time. I think that's like the scapegoat. But as you pointed out, you don't necessarily have to have low self-esteem for that. You can be that great achiever, but I think it's very critical that you stress that you don't know what you deserve and that you're that person who is almost like that social worker. You want to help, you want to do because you are smart. If it's nothing but, let me copy off your paper, Donna. Mm-hmm. Math for me, Donna, and I'll be your friend. It's in lieu of that. So it really comes from an inherent need to be accepted. And somehow maybe bleeds over and it gets to be an enormous need, but you don't know how to get that except to give. And so that makes the sociopath's job easier because you're already ready to give, even information, even access to your personal stuff. And I think that's very critical because a lot of women and men, but I'd like you to talk to this for a moment. What about the male who's susceptible to the female sociopath? Because we as men are never going to admit we get played. We're not going to admit that. We're not going to tell you that, we'll just rather say, oh man, she's just that way. She's difficult, or that girl is crazy. It's easy to say that. Everybody else can see it, but our unwillingness. Talk to us, Donna, about the male who is so susceptible to and falls in love with the female sociopath.
Well, essentially, it's very similar. Okay. I mean, anybody can be targeted. I mean, the fact of the matter is that we are all human and we all have vulnerabilities. And female sociopaths are just very good at targeting males with vulnerabilities. Now, one of the things that a lot of sociopaths do is that they use the pity play. Okay. And what that means is that they try to make you feel sorry for them. So for guys who want to be the rescuer and want to be the knight in shining armor, I mean, a female sociopath will jump right in there and come up with all these sob stories, and they'll tell you about, they lost their job and their kids are sick and they need this help, and their mother had a car accident, and all kinds of stuff, and this is what they do. So in a lot of cases, there are guys who think that it's their duty to rescue a female, and that's one of the ways that they get snagged. But that's only one. We talked before about the sex. I mean, I've had plenty of guys tell me that, the sex was fabulous and that's how they got hooked. Guys also want to be loved. And typically what happens is that a female sociopath will just pour it on. Of course, they all pour it on. I mean, there's one of the basic sociopathic seduction techniques is called love bombing. Okay. And what that means is that the sociopath will shower you with attention and affection. They'll tell you how wonderful they are. They want to spend every waking minute with you and every sleeping minute with you. They're booking dates like months in advance. And my ex, he very early on he wanted to get our diaries out. That's what he called it, which we would call a schedule, the diary. So it's okay. What night are we staying at your house? And what night are we staying at my house? And, they just have this whole plan. So anyhow, the traits from my experience are pretty much similar. The warning flags are similar. And I guess even the whole rescuing thing, because there are women who feel like they want to rescue men and, that they want to give. So the bottom line is that here's how you protect yourself from a sociopath. First of all, you have to know that they exist. I mean, that's the main thing. And that's like the biggest blind spot in our culture, in our society, is that we don't even know that these people exist. Yeah. The second thing is that you need to know the warning sign. And we only covered a couple of them today. Like I said, I've got a book with 10 warning signs in, and people have told me that it was right on the money. And they read the book, and some of the quotes that I have in the book, that they actually heard the exact same words. And then the third thing to do is to trust your instincts, okay? Our instincts are designed to protect us from predators, and sociopaths are essentially human predators. But this is another way in which society steers us wrong, because we are not taught to trust our instincts. Okay. When you get a feeling in your stomach, or the hair goes up on the back of your neck, or you just have a bad feeling about somebody, that's your warning, and you need to pay attention to that. And typically what happens is that we talk ourselves out of it. In fact, in one of my internet surveys, I asked this question. I asked, did you early in the relationship have an instinct or a gut feeling, or just intuitively know that something was wrong with the person or the relationship? 72% of the respondents said yes. Okay. Then if you add in the people who got warnings from other people, or even from the sociopath themselves, who say things like, well, sometimes I have this violent temper, things like that. In the end, 90% of people get some kind of warning that this is a bad deal, that this is a bad person. So the trick is to recognize it and pay attention.
Okay, Dad, we've got to deal with this piece, because you said that they like to plan ahead. They convince you that they want to spend every waking and sleeping moment with you. They just got to see you. And I know so many people that feel like, oh my God, this is what I have been waiting for all the days of my life in the earth. For someone who wants to be with me, for me. This has got to be it. So then when you start warning them, like, okay, well, that's kind of not normal. They're blowing up your phone. They're paging you. I mean, I'm not paging. I'm old. Texting you.
Yeah, texting.
You know what I'm saying? They're blowing your phone up, following you. They got all of your friends' numbers, and they convince you that, now this is good, ladies. Get this, gentlemen too. Oh, I just need to know your friends in case something happens to you. If something happens to you, I wouldn't know how to contact anyone to let them know that you're okay or something has happened. So they get all that information. But all of that, it makes me nervous. If someone wants to plan even a week ahead, I'm like, I don't know. I'm going to get back with you, because that's a little bit too sticky for me. And now some people say, well, you can't commit then, because if you're in a relationship, it's nothing wrong with that. But it's really a lot wrong with that because of the engagement in trying to lock me down, or to lock a person down is a little bit scary to me. So I think it's very critical for us to make sure that people understand tonight, if a person is just too into you, like so into you, that's a warning sign. Back off. That's not normal. That's not love. You're not that wonderful that they just got to be around you like that,
Okay. And what happens is that in a typical dating relationship, and this is how people miss this warning sign, in a typical dating relationship, or at least the kind where you meet in person. Suppose you're at a club or a bar or something like that, or at a party, and you meet someone. You don't immediately tell the person that you're interested. You kind of feel each other out, and you kind of, try and scope them out a little bit and go a little bit at a time. I mean, that's a normal dating progression. So what happens is that when a sociopath comes and starts love bombing you and telling you how wonderful you are and wanting to push everything ahead, full speed ahead, a whirlwind romance, because we don't have the information that this is a warning sign, we interpret it to mean that this person is just so head over heels in love with us that it must be true love. I mean, this is why this person wants to talk to us all the time. And the key differentiation is if the person is trying to control you. Okay. I mean, I don't think there's anything wrong with planning in advance. If you're going to have, if you want to go to an opera and the opera is in 3 months and you got to get tickets, you got to make a plan. Okay. But the issue is if somebody is trying to control you, and this is the precursor to abuse. It's when someone wants to know where you are all the time, starts telling you what to wear, starts telling you what to eat, when to sleep, what you can and cannot do. I mean, this is the first sign that you are headed for an abusive relationship.
Wow. We have a comment. Someone said, look for the signs of depression. And so for me, I think that's something that we probably need to talk about. That's a little bit different. Does the sociopath, he's usually more outgoing and won't show that sign, right? Well,
the thing to know about sociopaths is that there are differences. I mean, These people are not all the same. And there are some cases where sociopaths seem to have depression, but it's not real common. And because they do tend to be, energetic so I would say depression isn't real common, but it is possible. Anything is possible, and the other thing that can happen is that people can have multiple disorders. They can be both sociopathic and bipolar. So, I mean, it is possible. So the idea is, as I said before, to know the warning signs, and the key is to trust your own instincts and recognize that they're good. I mean, these people live their lives by exploiting others, and they get better at it. In fact, one of my upcoming books is going to be about senior sociopaths. And, because there's this rumor going around in mental health professions that they burn out, they get to a certain age and they're not as bad anymore. Well, that's not true. Essentially, what happens is that they become less impulsive, so they're less likely to commit like violent crimes, but they're still deceitful, they're still manipulative, and they're still exploitative. In fact, all my research shows that they stay the same or get worse, like after the age of 50.
Wow. We have a comment from Nisi Croft. She says, antisocial personality disorder, sometimes called sociopathy, is a mental condition in which a person consistently shows no regard for right and wrong and ignores the rights and feelings of others. People with antisocial personality disorder tend to antagonize, manipulate, or treat others harshly or with callous indifference. Now, that's so true. And when I studied that is so true. And one of an older guy once told us one day, he said, stay away from people who are lawbreakers. I said, what do you mean? He said, one of the signs you look for is a person who has a radar detector in their car. I said, oh, that's kind of extreme. He said, no, listen to that. He said, it means that they intend to break the law. They're not going to govern themselves by the speed limit. So they have now gone and purchased tools to assist them in breaking the law. He says, watch how they handle stop signs. Mm-hmm. If they treat a stop sign as a yield sign, if they run through traffic lights repeatedly, he said, that's a sign. You got to look at those small foxes that destroy the vine. And so I think Nisha's very right.
I'm a psychopath if we're using the traffic analogy.
Lord, we need to pray for you. But I think that
I do respect the stop sign, though, guys.
Okay, but I think that that's very real. I think that's very important. That law breaking part of them means that they're going to blatantly disregard your feelings. We're running out of time, but I'd like you to talk a little bit about the narcissist. I tell people all the time when they're talking to me about relationships, I said, you're dealing with a classic narcissist. Go and study what the narcissist is, how they behave, so that you'll know what you're dealing with. And it's almost too late at that point sometimes because they're so involved. It's like, okay, how do I get out of this? Talk to us real quickly about that.
Okay. Well, essentially, everybody who has antisocial personality disorder is also a narcissist. But not all narcissists have antisocial personality disorder. And from what I can see, the difference seems to be the degree of malice, in that a sociopath or someone, well, let me be precise, someone with antisocial personality disorder or psychopathy will intentionally hurt someone. I mean, they will do this for fun, for entertainment. Whereas narcissists tend to be so focused on getting validation for themselves that they hurt other people and don't even realize it. So they're just kind of clueless about how their behavior affects others. So there are actually several different kinds of narcissists, and there are some, it's like you picture someone like this who is very vain and thinks they're the best thing in the world, and it likes to look in the mirror and is concerned about appearances, and they have this amazing sense of entitlement, and that's all true. But then there are some who are kind of like covert and essentially pretend to be like low key and it's just kind of this passive aggressive type of thing. So there are several strains of narcissism. So it's just another thing to be aware of, is that, again, these folks with disorders do not exhibit all the same behaviors. And so it is important to take a look at the total package. And if you're starting to see more minuses than pluses, you got to evaluate, whether or not you really want to be in this situation.
Absolutely. And so, Donna, as we're winding down, what are some things what's one thing that you'd like to leave our viewers with tonight?
As I said, the most important thing to know is that these folks exist. Okay. I mean, they are out there. We talked about 46 million people, with these diagnoses. They are everywhere. They are men and women. They are in all races, all demographics. They work in all professions. And so there is no segment of society that is free of psychopaths and antisocials and other disordered people. And so we need to be aware of that, and we need to educate ourselves about what the warning signs are, and in order to protect ourselves, because otherwise we're just sitting ducks. We are just, blind to what's going on. So we need to educate ourselves, and we need to trust our intuition.
Awesome. Before we go, give these folks the name of your book and where they can find it.
Okay, well, I have two books, actually. The first book is my personal story, and that actually goes further into how it happened and why it happened. And so that book is called Love Fraud: How Marriage to a Sociopath Fulfilled My Spiritual Plan. And that reads like a cross between a true crime novel and a spiritual journey.
Wow.
And the second book is Red Flags of Love Fraud: 10 Signs You're Dating a Sociopath. And that's more of a self-help type book that lists all the behaviors and what to look out for. They're all available on Amazon or also from our website, which is lovefraud.com.
Awesome. And guys, for your benefit, we have placed that website right in the description. So certainly we encourage you to go and get Donna's book. Mario, did you have anything before we sign off?
Donna, thank you so very much. You have been a delight. We appreciate your story. And I think that a lot of people are going to get some help because they have a resource. And thank you for being transparent with us and so forthright with your story and information. Thank you.
My pleasure. I'm so glad. And I hope that it helps lots of people because that's what I want to do.
Good deal.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for being with us here again on Real Perspectives. We are here every Tuesday evening, 6 p.m. Central Standard Time. So until next time, have a great day.